The call came at 3:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. David's voice on the other end was strained, breathless. "Mom, something's wrong. My chest. I can't." The line went dead. I fumbled for the lamp, my heart racing faster than my thoughts. The green glow of the clock mocked me as I dialed 911, then grabbed my keys and purse. "Please, not David. Not my son." The drive to Memorial Hospital passed in a blur of streetlights and prayers. The emergency room was bathed in that particular fluorescent harshness that makes everything look worse than it already is. I rushed to the reception desk, the words tumbling out. "My son, David Fairfield, just called me about chest pain." The look on the nurse's face told me everything before her words confirmed it. "Mrs. Fairfield, please come with me. The doctor would like to speak with you." By the time I reached the small consultation room, my 45-year-old son was gone. Massive heart attack, the doctor explained with clinical detachment. Nothing they could do. The words floated around me, refusing to land anywhere that made sense. How could my healthy, vibrant son be simply gone? Stephanie stood beside me in the sterile waiting room, her face a mask of shock. But I caught something else in her expression. Relief. No, surely I was imagining things in my grief. My daughter-in-law and I had never been close, but David had always been the bridge between us. Now that bridge was gone, and I was beginning to understand just how deep the chasm really was. "What happens now?" I whispered, still unable to process that David was simply gone.
It is a huge challenge.
Stephanie straightened her shoulders, and for a moment, her composure slipped. Now we deal with reality. Eleanor, David's gone, and I have decisions to make. The coldness in her voice sent a chill through me. "Of course, dear. We'll get through this together," I said, reaching for her hand. She pulled away. "We'll see about that." I should have recognized the warning in those words. Instead, I attributed her coldness to shock. People grieve differently, I told myself. Some become emotional, others turn inward. Stephanie was clearly the latter. The funeral arrangements consumed the next 3 days. I offered to help pay for everything. David had been my only child after all, but Stephanie insisted on handling it herself. "I'm his wife," she kept saying. I know what he would have wanted. Fair enough. I focused on writing his eulogy, calling relatives, and trying to hold myself together. At 67, I'd buried my parents and my husband, but losing a child felt like a special kind of hell. The night before the funeral, as I sat in what had been David's childhood bedroom in the house he'd shared with Stephanie, I found myself staring at the framed photos on the dresser. David graduating college, David and Stephanie's wedding, David holding his nephew at Christmas last year. What I didn't see were any photos of David and me from recent years. Stephanie had systematically removed them, I realized. When had that happened? A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Stephanie stood in the doorway, no longer bothering to hide the calculating look in her eyes. "We need to talk, Eleanor. The funeral was beautiful. I'll give Stephanie that." The flower arrangements were elegant. The music was David's favorite hymns, and the reception afterward was perfectly orchestrated. What wasn't beautiful was watching my daughter-in-law play the grieving widow while making pointed comments about moving forward in new chapters. I stood in the receiving line, accepting condolences from friends and family, when I overheard Stephanie talking to her sister behind the flower arrangements. "The life insurance alone will cover the mortgage for 2 years," she was saying in a low voice. "And without the extra expenses, extra expenses." What extra expenses? "What about Eleanor?" her sister asked. "Where will she go?" Stephanie laugh was sharp and brittle. "That's not my problem anymore. She can figure it out like the rest of us adults." My blood ran cold. I'd been living with them for 2 years, ever since I'd sold my own home to help with their down payment. David had insisted it would be temporary, just until I found something smaller and more manageable. Somehow temporary had stretched into permanent, and I'd grown comfortable in the routine of helping with the house, cooking dinner, being useful. Apparently I'd been naive. "Eleanor." Stephanie appeared at my elbow, her public face firmly in place. "Could you help me in the kitchen? There are some things we need to discuss." I followed her through the crowd of mourners, nodding at neighbors, and accepting final hugs from my sister, who was flying back to Phoenix in the morning. In the kitchen, Stephanie closed the door and turned to face me. "I'm going to be direct," she said, her voice calm and businesslike. "This house is in David's name, which means it's mine now. I need time and space to process my grief without complications.
And it's a huge opportunity.
Complications, I kept my voice steady, though my heart was racing. You living here, it's not working anymore, Eleanor. I need my privacy. The words hit me like a physical blow. Stephanie, I understand you're grieving, but surely we can... No. She held up a hand. I've made my decision. I'll give you until tomorrow evening to pack your things. That should be plenty of time.
But here we are.
I stared at her, searching for any sign of the woman who'd once called me Mom, who'd hugged me at Christmas dinners, who'd cried when David proposed. That woman was gone, replaced by someone cold and calculating. Where exactly do you expect me to go?
So it is a huge challenge.
Stephanie shrugged.
And it's a huge opportunity.
You're a grown woman, Eleanor. You'll figure something out.
And we have to change with it.
The casual cruelty of it took my breath away.
In times of great
David would be horrified by this conversation. David's dead. The words came out flat final. And the sooner you accept that, the better off we'll both be. I packed my entire life into 4 suitcases and 2 boxes. 67 years reduced to what would fit in the trunk of my car. As I folded my clothes and wrapped my few remaining photographs, I kept waiting for Stephanie to come upstairs and apologize, to say she'd spoken in grief, and of course I could stay until I found somewhere else to go. She never came.
So it is a huge
Instead, at exactly 6:00 p.m. the next day, she appeared in my doorway with her arms crossed. Time's up, Eleanor.
In times of great
I zipped the last suitcase closed and looked around the room that had been my sanctuary for 2 years. The walls were bare now, stripped of the few personal touches I'd been allowed to add. It looked like a guest room again, which I supposed it always had been. I'll need a few more minutes to get everything to the car, I said.
Here we are.
I'll help you. It wasn't an offer. It was a statement. Stephanie wanted me gone, and she wanted to make sure it happened quickly. We made 3 trips in silence. As I loaded the last box into my car, I turned to say goodbye, maybe to make one final appeal to whatever remained of her humanity. I know you're angry with me for some reason, I said quietly. I wish I knew what I'd done wrong so I could fix it. Stephanie's expression didn't soften. You didn't do anything wrong, Eleanor. You just exist in my space, in my life, in my way. David felt sorry for you, but I don't. The honesty was brutal and somehow cleaner than the polite fiction we'd been maintaining.
But here we are.
I see. I got into my car and rolled down the window. Will you at least tell me if there's going to be a formal reading of David's will? I assume he left something. Why would he leave you anything? Stephanie's voice was genuinely puzzled.
So it is a huge
You're not his wife, and it's not like you ever contributed financially to our household. The irony was so sharp, it actually made me smile. The $40,000 to $1,000 I'd given them for the down payment might disagree with that assessment, but clearly Stephanie had either conveniently forgotten or genuinely convinced herself it had been a gift. Of course, I said, silly of me to assume. I drove away without looking back, heading toward the Hampton Inn on Route 9.
But here we are.
It was the closest hotel I could afford while I figured out what came next. In the rearview mirror, I watched Stephanie stand in the driveway until my car disappeared around the corner. At the hotel, I checked in for a week and carried my suitcases to a generic room that smelled like industrial cleaning products and broken dreams. I sat on the polyester bedspread and stared at my reflection in the mirror above the dresser. Who was this woman looking back at me? A widow, now childless, homeless, and apparently worthless in the eyes of the only family she had left. But as I sat there in that sterile room, something unexpected began to stir in my chest. Not despair, though that was there too. Something sharper, something that felt almost like anticipation. Stephanie thought she'd won. She thought she'd successfully discarded the inconvenient mother-in-law and claimed her prize. What she didn't know was that David had been a much better son than she'd ever given him credit for. I spent that first night in the hotel room, drifting between shock and grief. The finality of it all kept hitting me in waves. David was gone. My sweet boy, the one who'd made me Mother's Day cards with crayon and glitter, the teenager who'd stayed up late talking about his dreams, the man who'd walked me down the aisle at his own wedding when my Robert had been gone 3 years already. All those moments, those memories now sealed in time, never to be added to again. And now, I was truly alone. Even the small comfort of living in his home, of being near the life he'd built, had been stripped away. The next morning, I woke to the jarring sound of the hotel alarm clock, momentarily confused about where I was. The realization crashed over me anew. This wasn't a nightmare. This was my life now. I made coffee in the small pot provided by the hotel and pulled out my laptop. First things first, I needed to find somewhere to live. My teacher's pension and Social Security wouldn't stretch far, especially not after helping David and Stephanie with their house down payment. I had about $15,000 in savings, but that would disappear quickly if I wasn't careful. Rental listings blurred before my eyes. Everything seemed either too expensive or too depressing. Dingy basement apartments in neighborhoods where I wouldn't feel safe, or assisted living communities that cost more per month than I made. I'd never expected to be house hunting at 67, certainly not alone, and with such limited means. By noon, I had a headache and no prospects. I closed the laptop and decided to get some air. The hotel was near a small park, and I thought a walk might clear my head. The February air was brisk, the trees still bare, but there was a hint of the coming spring in the quality of light. I found a bench by a small pond and sat watching a pair of ducks glide across the surface. They moved together in perfect synchronicity, as if guided by the same invisible thread. How easy it had been to believe that Stephanie and I had been bound together by our love for David. How wrong I'd been. The ties that had seemed so secure had been cut with a single stroke, as clean and final as the line David's doctor had drawn between life and death. Just like that, the foundation of my life had shifted, revealing the illusion I'd been living in. I pulled my coat tighter against the chill and tried to make sense of my new reality. There had to be a path forward, even if I couldn't see it yet. Back at the hotel, I called my sister Joan in Phoenix. "Eleanor," she gasped when I explained the situation. "That woman threw you out after the funeral. That's beyond cruel. It's inhumane." The validation felt good, like a warm blanket on a cold night. "I'm not sure what to do now," I admitted. "I can't afford most apartments, and I don't have enough saved to buy anything decent." "Come stay with me," Joan offered immediately. "I have plenty of room, and Arizona winters are a lot nicer than what you're dealing with." It was tempting. Joan and I had always been close despite the distance, but leaving meant surrendering completely, abandoning any connection to the life I'd built, to the community where I'd taught for 30 years, to the memories of both Robert and David. "Let me think about it," I told her. "It might come to that, but I want to explore my options here first." Joan didn't push, but I could hear the worry in her voice. "Call me every day, Eleanor. I mean it. And if you need money, I've got enough for now," I assured her, though I wasn't entirely convinced of that myself. "I'll keep you posted." After hanging up, I pulled out my address book and started calling friends from my teaching days. Most expressed sympathy, but had little practical help to offer. A few invited me for dinner, which I gratefully accepted. At least I wouldn't have to eat alone every night. The days passed in a blur of phone calls, rental applications, and internet searches. I extended my stay at the hotel twice, watching my savings dwindle. By the end of the second week, I was beginning to think Joan's offer might be my only option. Then, on day 15 of my hotel stay, just as I was starting to seriously worry about my dwindling savings, the call came from David's lawyer. "Mrs. Fairfield, this is James Morrison from Morrison & Associates. I handled your son's legal affairs."
But here we are.
"Yes, Mr. Morrison. I remember meeting you at David and Stephanie's house closing. I'm calling to inform you that the probate process is complete, and there will be a formal reading of David's will next Tuesday at 2 p.m. in my office. Your presence is required." My presence was required. I sat up straighter, ignoring the way the cheap mattress springs protested. "I'm sorry, but I think there might be some confusion." Stephanie seemed to think Mrs. Fairfield. Mr. Morrison interrupted gently. "I can only tell you what David's will specifies, and it specifically names you as a beneficiary. I'll see you next Tuesday at 2 p.m. After he hung up, I stared at my phone for a long moment. David had left me something after all. Probably some small keepsake, maybe his father's watch, or the photo albums from his childhood. Stephanie wouldn't be happy about it, but she'd have to live with whatever David had decided. I spent the weekend apartment hunting online, looking at senior living communities and modest one-bedroom rentals within my budget. My savings account could cover another week at the hotel, plus first month's rent and a security deposit. But I'd need to be careful. Social Security and the small pension from my teaching career would have to stretch further than I'd originally planned. At 1:45 p.m. the following Tuesday, I sat in the parking lot of Morrison & Associates, watching Stephanie emerge from a silver BMW wearing a black dress that probably cost more than my monthly budget. She'd brought someone with her, a man in an expensive suit, who kept checking his phone.
So it is a huge
I smoothed my own dress, a modest navy blue that I'd worn to countless parent-teacher conferences, and took a deep breath before heading inside.
In times of great uncertainty,
when I walked into the reception area, Stephanie's face darkened. "What is she doing here?" she demanded of the receptionist. "Mrs. Fairfield is here for the will reading," the young woman replied professionally. "Which Mrs. Fairfield?"
Thought it would come to
"Both
this.
of you, apparently."
But
the man in the
are.
suit, who I now recognized as Stephanie's brother Marcus, leaned over to whisper something in her ear. She nodded curtly and took a seat across the waiting room from me, making it clear that whatever temporary civility might have existed between us was officially over.
So it is a huge
Mr. Morrison
challenge,
appeared promptly at
and
2
it's a
p.m.
huge
and ushered us
opportunity.
into his
World has
office.
changed,
He was a
and we have to
kind-faced
change
man in
with
his
it.
60s with silver hair and gentle
In times
eyes
of great
behind
uncertainty,
wire-rimmed
it's
glasses,
often
the kind of
small,
lawyer who
consistent
probably still
actions
believed in
that
doing
provide
right
the
by his
most
clients.
comfort and stability.
"Ladies, gentlemen,"
First started
he began
writing,
settling behind his mahogany
I
desk.
thought it was just
"I know
about
this is a difficult time,
putting words
but
on
David was
paper.
very specific about his
Thought it
wishes.
would come to this.
I'll read the will in its
But here
entirety,
we are.
and then we can discuss any questions." Stephanie
Often
sat
the
forward
small,
eagerly, her
consistent
hands clasped
actions
in her lap.
that provide the most
Marcus had
comfort
pulled out a
and
legal
stability.
pad and was preparing to
Huge
take notes.
opportunity.
I simply folded my hands and waited. The first part of the will was
So
exactly
it is a
what I'd
huge
expected.
challenge,
Stephanie
and it's a
inherited the
huge
house, the
opportunity.
cars,
World has
David's retirement
changed,
accounts, and his
we
life
have to
insurance
change
policy.
with it.
She nodded approvingly at
In
each
times of
item,
great
occasionally
uncertainty,
glancing at me
it's often
with
the
something that
small,
looked like
consistent
satisfaction.
actions
Then
that
Mr.
provide the
Morrison's
most
voice
comfort
changed
and
slightly,
stability.
and I
First
knew we
started
were approaching
writing,
something important.
I thought it was
There is,
just
however,
about
one final provision that
putting
David
words
added
on
just
paper.
3 months ago.
Thought it would
The
come
atmosphere
to
in
this.
the room shifted.
But here
Stephanie
we are.
stopped nodding and leaned forward, her eyes sharp with sudden
First
attention.
started writing,
Marcus sat down his pen,
I thought it was
and I found
just
myself
about
holding my breath.
putting words
Mr.
on
Morrison
paper.
cleared his throat and
Thought it
continued
would
reading.
come to this.
To my mother,
But here
Eleanor
we are.
Fairfield, who provided the down payment for our home
Often
and
the
has never
small,
asked for repayment.
consistent actions
I leave the
that provide
contents
the
of
most
safety
comfort
deposit
and
box
stability.
E3537
Huge opportunity.
at First National Bank, along with all associated documentation and
So
account
it is a
information
huge challenge,
contained therein.
and it's a huge opportunity.
What safety deposit box?
And we
Stephanie
have to change
voice was
with
sharp.
It.
David never
In
mentioned a
times of
safety
great
deposit box.
uncertainty, it's often the small,
Mr.
consistent
Morrison looked up from the
actions
document.
that provide the most
Apparently, it
comfort
was
and
something he
stability.
maintained privately.
First started writing,
he was quite specific that the
I thought it
contents
was
should go
just
to his
about
mother. I was a
putting
surprise
words
to
on
Stephanie,
paper.
but for different
Thought
reasons.
it would come to this.
David had never mentioned a
But
safety
here we
deposit
are.
box to me either. What could he possibly have
Often
put
the
there that
small,
was meant for me?
consistent actions
What's
that
in it?
provide the most
Marcus
comfort
asked, his
and
lawyer
stability.
instincts kicking in.
Huge
I
opportunity.
have no idea, Mr. Morrison replied honestly. David simply provided the
So
bank
it is a
information and
huge
instructions that
challenge,
Mrs. Fairfield
and
should
it's a
have
huge
full access
opportunity.
upon
World
his
has
death.
changed,
Stephanie's
and we
face
have
was
to
flushed
change
with
with
anger.
it.
This is ridiculous.
In times of
If there's
great
anything of
uncertainty,
value in that
it's
box, it
often
should
the
be part of the
small,
estate.
consistent
We need to
actions
contest this.
that provide
You're
the most
certainly free to
comfort
try,
and stability.
Mr. Morrison
First
said
started
mildly.
writing,
But the provision is
I
very
thought it
clear,
was just
and David
about
was completely competent
putting
when he
words
added
on
it to his
paper.
will. I witnessed
it
the
would come
document
to this.
myself. When exactly
here we
did he
are.
add this provision? I asked quietly. Mr.
Often the
Morrison
small,
consulted his notes.
consistent actions
3 months ago,
that
February
provide the most
15th,
comfort and
he came in
stability.
specifically to make
Huge
this addition.
opportunity.
February 15th. I remembered that date clearly because it was
So
the
it
day
is a
after
huge
Valentine's Day,
challenge,
and David
and
had
it's a
seemed
huge
unusually
opportunity.
quiet
World
during our
has
family
changed,
dinner.
and we have
Stephanie
to
had been
change with
complaining
it.
about something the neighbor's dog, I think,
In times of
and
great
David had barely
uncertainty,
spoken
it's
throughout the
often
meal.
Small,
This is a
consistent
waste of
actions
time,
that
Stephanie
provide the most
snapped, standing
comfort and
abruptly.
stability.
Marcus,
First
let's
started
go.
writing,
We'll file a challenge tomorrow.
I thought it was just
Actually,
about
Mr. Morrison
putting
said,
words
pulling
on
out another
paper.
document.
Thought it would
Before
come
you
to
leave,
this.
I need to inform you both
But here
that
we
David
are.
left specific instructions for his mother regarding the
Often
contents of the
small,
safety deposit
consistent
box.
actions
Mrs.
that provide the
Fairfield,
most
he
comfort
wanted
and
you to
stability.
access it within the
A
next
huge
few days
opportunity.
once you've completed the necessary documentation with the bank. He handed
So
me a
it is
sealed
a
envelope.
huge challenge,
These are the
and
bank
it's a huge
documents
opportunity.
and his
World has
personal key.
changed,
The bank
and
will
we
need to
have to
verify the
change
death
with it.
certificate and process the paperwork
In times
before
of
you can
great
access the
uncertainty,
box.
it's often
Usually
the
takes
small,
about 3 business
consistent
days.
actions that
Stephanie's
provide the
eyes
most
fixed on the
comfort and
envelope in my
stability.
hands like a
First
hawk
started
watching a mouse.
writing,
I'm coming with you to the bank.
Just about
I'm afraid that's not possible,
putting words on
Mr.
paper.
Morrison interjected.
Thought it would come
The safety
to this,
deposit box access
but
is
here we
restricted
are.
to Mrs. Eleanor Fairfield only. Bank
Often
policy.
the small,
This is
consistent
insane,
actions
Stephanie
that provide the
sputtered.
most comfort
How do we
and
even know there's
stability?
anything valuable
Huge
in there?
opportunity.
It could be empty or just sentimental junk. I stood up, clutching the envelope.
So it is a huge
I suppose we'll find out next week.
and it's a huge
As we
opportunity.
filed out of the
World
office,
has changed,
I could feel
and we
Stephanie's
have to
eyes
change
boring
with
into
it.
my back. In the parking
In
lot, she
times of
cornered me
great
beside my
uncertainty,
car.
it's often
Eleanor,
the
let's be
small,
reasonable about this.
consistent actions
Whatever's in that
that
box,
provide
we
the
should
most
share it.
comfort and
David would have
stability.
wanted his
First
wife to
started
benefit from
writing,
anything he left behind.
I thought it was
For the
just
first time
about
since David's death,
putting
I almost
words on
smiled.
paper.
You made it very
Thought
clear
it
that
would
you don't
come to
believe
this,
David would have left me anything.
But here we are.
Now suddenly you're concerned about sharing. I'm just saying,
Often the small,
you're saying whatever you think
consistent
will get you
actions
access to that safety
provide the
deposit
most
box.
comfort and stability.
I unlocked my
Huge
car door,
opportunity.
but Stephanie put her hand on my arm to stop me. David was very specific.
So it is
the
a
contents
huge
are mine.
challenge, and it's
Her
a
mask
huge
slipped
opportunity.
completely,
World has
then
changed,
revealing the cold
and
calculation
we have to
beneath.
change with it.
Don't forget, Eleanor, you're homeless.
In times of great
you need my
uncertainty,
goodwill more than
it's
I need
often
yours.
The small,
I paused
consistent
with my hand on the
actions
car door.
that provide the most comfort
Actually,
and
Stephanie,
stability.
I don't think
First
I need
started
anything from you at
writing,
all. Her
I
eyes
thought it was
widened
just
slightly,
about
surprised by my
putting
quiet
words on
defiance.
paper.
Then they narrowed
Thought
again.
it would come to this.
We'll see about that, Eleanor.
But here we
we'll
are.
see just how independent you really are. I drove
Often
back to the Hampton
small,
Inn with my heart
consistent
pounding in my
actions
chest,
that
both
provide the
excited
most
and
comfort
terrified
and
by what
stability.
might be in that safety
Huge
deposit box.
opportunity.
What could David have left me that was so important? He'd hidden it away
So it
and
is
made
a
special
huge
provisions for
challenge,
it in his will.
and it's a huge
For the first time in
World
2
has
weeks,
changed,
I fell
and we
asleep
have to
without
change
trying the
with it.
envelope from Mr. Morrison secure under
In
my
times
pillow.
of great
The
uncertainty,
next morning, I
it's
called
often
First
the
National
small,
Bank and made an
consistent
appointment to start the
actions
paperwork
that
for
provide the most
accessing the
comfort
safety
and
deposit
stability.
box.
First
The bank
started
representative
writing,
was polite but firm.
I thought it
I'd
was
need the
just
death
about
certificate, multiple forms
putting
of
words
ID,
on
and the
paper.
original key.
Thought it would
Then
come
there'd be
to
a 3-day
this.
waiting period while they
But here we
processed
are.
everything. Bank policy, she explained, for security
Often the
purposes.
small, consistent
I spent those
actions
3 days
that provide the
alternating
most
between
comfort
hope
and
and
stability.
fear.
A huge
Hope that whatever
opportunity.
David had left me might help me secure a stable future. Fear that
So
Stephanie
it
might
is a
find some
huge
legal
challenge,
loophole to block me
and
from
it's a
accessing
huge
it.
opportunity. World
I
has
hadn't heard from her
changed,
since the will
and
reading,
we have to
but I
change
didn't
with
trust
it.
the silence. Marcus was a corporate
times of
lawyer,
great
and while this
uncertainty,
wasn't his
it's
specialty,
often the small,
he'd have connections.
consistent actions
I imagined
that
them
provide
plotting
the most
together,
comfort
looking
and
for any
stability.
way to invalidate
First started
David's final
writing,
wishes.
I
To
thought
distract
it was
myself, I
just
continued
about
apartment hunting.
putting words
I found
on
a small
paper.
one-bedroom in a seniors
Thought it would come
complex
to
that might
this.
work, though it was at
But
the
here we
upper limit
are.
of what I could afford. I put my name on the waiting list,
Often the
not ready to
small,
commit,
consistent
without knowing
actions
what
that
resources I
provide
might
the most
have after
comfort and
accessing the safety
stability.
deposit
A
box.
huge opportunity.
Joan called daily, worried about my situation. Have you thought more about
So it
coming
is
to
a
stay with me?
huge
She
challenge,
asked during our
and it's a
Thursday call.
huge opportunity.
I'm
World
waiting
has
to see what's in this
changed,
safety
and
deposit
we have
box
to
David
change
left
with
me,
it.
I told her. It might change
In
my
times
options.
of great
What do you think
uncertainty,
is in there? I
it's
have no
often the
idea.
small,
But whatever it
consistent
is, he
actions
went to a lot
that
of trouble
provide
to
the
make
most
sure I got
comfort
it,
and
to
stability.
make sure that
First
awful
started
woman
writing,
didn't. Joan added.
I thought it was
I always got the
just
sense she
about
didn't like you much.
putting words
I
on
sighed.
paper.
Apparently, she was
Thought it
just
would come to
tolerating me
this.
because of David.
But here
Once he
we
was
are.
gone, she didn't see any reason to keep up the pretense.
Often
Some
the
people show
small,
you exactly who they
consistent
are when there's no
actions
longer
that
any
provide the most
benefit to
comfort
pretending,
and
Joan said
stability.
softly.
A huge
Her
opportunity.
words stayed with me that night as I lay awake staring at the hotel ceiling.
So
Stephanie
it
had
is a
indeed shown me
huge
exactly who
challenge,
she was.
and it's a huge
but so had
opportunity.
David in
World
his
has
own
changed,
way. He'd seen
and we
something
have to
coming that
change
I'd
with
been
it.
blind to, and he'd prepared for
In
it.
times of great uncertainty,
Friday morning dawned
it's often
clear
the
and
small,
cold. I
consistent
dressed carefully in a
actions
simple
that
black
provide the most
pantsuit,
comfort
another
and
teaching
stability.
staple, and
First
drove to
started
First
writing,
National Bank, the
I
envelope with
thought it
David's
was
key
just about
and the death certificate
putting
secure in
words
my
on
purse.
paper.
The bank manager,
it would
Mrs.
come to
Peterson, was
this.
expecting me.
But
She'd
here we
obviously
are.
been briefed about the situation because she offered her
Often the
condolences
small,
and escorted me
consistent
personally to the
actions
vault
that
area.
provide the most comfort
Box
and stability.
E3537
Huge
is one of our
opportunity.
larger units, she explained as we walked through the security doors. Your son
So
rented
it
it
is a
about 5
huge
years ago
challenge,
and visited
and it's
quite
a huge
regularly.
opportunity. World
5
has
years David had been
changed,
planning something
and we
for
have
5
to
years.
change with it.
Mrs. Peterson used her master key
In
while I
times of
inserted
great
David's key,
uncertainty,
and the
it's
box
often
slid
the
out
small,
smoothly. It
consistent
was indeed
actions
large, about
that
the size
provide
of
the
a
most
briefcase
comfort
and
and
surprisingly
stability.
heavy.
First started
Take all the time
writing,
you need, Mrs.
I
Peterson
thought it
said,
was just
showing me
about
to to a private viewing room.
putting words on
I'll be at my
paper.
desk when you're finished.
Thought it would come to
Alone
this,
in the small windowless room,
but here we are.
I lifted the lid of the safety deposit box. The first thing I saw was a letter addressed to me in David's familiar handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. Mom, it began. If you're reading this, then I'm gone. And Stephanie has probably shown you exactly who she really is. I'm sorry for that, but I'm not surprised.
And we have to change.
I've known for years what kind of person I married, and I've been preparing for this possibility.
It's often the small,
my heart raced as I continued reading. The words blurred through my tears, but I forced myself to focus. You gave us $40,000 for our house down payment. I know you thought of it as a loan, even though you never asked for repayment. I've been investing that money for the past 5 years, adding to it whenever possible. The money in the accompanying accounts isn't just repayment. It's what careful investing has grown into. I set the letter down with shaking hands and looked at the documents underneath.
So it is
bank
a
statements,
huge challenge,
investment portfolios,
and it's a huge
account numbers.
The world has changed,
my eyes scanned the balance sheets, trying to make sense of the numbers. $185,000 in various investment accounts, all in my name, all accessible with proper documentation. I picked up David's letter again, hardly believing what I was reading. I also discovered that Stephanie has been telling people, you contribute nothing to our household.
But here we are.
What she doesn't mention is that our mortgage has been automatically paid from my salary account for the entire time you've lived with us. Any money you've given us went straight into investments for your future. The letter continued. I've been documenting everything, Mom. Every email, every text, every casual comment she's made about you. It's all in the folder labeled documentation. I thought you should know what kind of person has been living in our house. My vision blurred as I reached for the folder he'd mentioned. Inside were printed emails, text message screenshots, even photographs of credit card statements, evidence of years of manipulation and deceit. The final paragraph of David's letter made my eyes fill with tears. You deserve so much better than the way she's treated you. Take this money and build yourself a life where no one can make you feel unwanted ever again. And Mom, don't tell Stephanie about any of this until you're safely away from her. Trust me on this one.
And it's a huge
all my love, David.
World has changed.
I sat in that little room for nearly an hour reading through everything David had left for me. By the time I emerged, I had a clear picture of exactly how my daughter-in-law had been manipulating both of us for years. Mrs. Peterson helped me transfer all the documents to a large envelope and explained the process for accessing the investment accounts. As I walked to my car, my phone rang.
Here we are.
Eleanor. Stephanie's voice was falsely sweet. I was wondering if you'd like to come by for lunch today. We could discuss what you found in the safety deposit box. I smiled at my reflection in the car window. That's very generous, Stephanie. I'll be there at noon.
And it's a huge
It was time for Stephanie to learn that sometimes the people you underestimate are the ones who surprise you most.
In times of great uncertainty,
I arrived at Stephanie's house. Her house now at exactly noon, carrying a small gift bag and wearing my best poker face. She answered the door in a flowing white dress that probably cost more than my monthly hotel bill, all smiles and false warmth.
But here we are.
Eleanor, I'm so glad you came. I've made your favorite chicken salad. Funny how she remembered my favorite foods now that she wanted something from me. The dining room table was set with her wedding china and fresh flowers. Stephanie had clearly put effort into this performance. She poured iced tea and chattered about the weather while I sat quietly watching her work up to what she really wanted to discuss. So she finally said, settling into her chair with practiced grace, I've been thinking about yesterday about the safety deposit box. Have you? I sipped my tea calmly. I know we've had our differences, but David would want us to support each other through this difficult time. Family should stick together. Family. Rich coming from the woman who'd thrown me out the day after her husband's funeral. I couldn't agree more, I said evenly. Stephanie's eyes lit up clearly, thinking she'd found an opening. I'm so relieved to hear you say that. I was worried you might be angry about having to find your own place so quickly, but you understand I needed space to grieve. Of course. I took a bite of chicken salad. Grief affects everyone differently. Exactly. She leaned forward eagerly. So about what David left you, I was thinking we could pool our resources, combine whatever was in that box with David's life insurance. Maybe invest it together. I have some wonderful financial advisors. I bet she did. The same ones who'd been helping her make questionable spending decisions for years. That's very thoughtful, Stephanie, but I'm curious. What makes you think there was anything valuable in the safety deposit box? She paused, clearly not expecting the question. Well, David was always so private about certain financial matters. He must have had a reason for keeping something separate.
In times of great uncertainty,
that's an interesting choice of words. You know what I mean. She waved a hand dismissively. Men and their financial planning. They never tell us wives everything. I set down my fork and looked directly at her. Actually, Stephanie, I think David told you exactly as much as he thought you needed to know. Something flickered in her eyes. Uncertainty, maybe a hint of fear. What did you find in the box, Eleanor? The moment of truth was approaching, but I wasn't quite ready to play that card yet. Instead, I reached for the gift bag I'd brought.
So it is a
I brought you something, I said, pulling out a small wrapped package. A little thank you gift.
And we have
she unwrapped
to
it eagerly, revealing a framed photograph of David from his college graduation.
It's often the
Eleanor, this is lovely. Thank you. I thought you should have it. After all, you were such a devoted wife. The emphasis I placed on devoted wasn't lost on her. She looked up sharply, searching my face for hidden meaning. What's that supposed to mean?
But here we are.
Nothing at all. I'm just appreciating how well you took care of my son. Stephanie set the photograph down carefully, her demeanor shifting. The fake sweetness was evaporating, replaced by something warier. Eleanor, you're being cryptic. Just tell me what was in the safety deposit box.
And it's a huge
I smiled and took another sip of tea.
And we
documents
have to change
mostly.
With it.
Very interesting reading material.
In times of
what kind of
great
documents?
Oh,
you know, financial records, investment statements, some correspondence.
The most comfort and
I paused meaningfully.
First started
Quite a few printed emails and text
I thought
messages.
It was just about
the color drained from Stephanie's face.
Paper.
Text messages. David was quite thorough in his record keeping,
but here we are.
Especially toward the end. I pulled out my phone and opened the photos I'd taken of various text conversations.
The most comfort
Would you
and
like to see one? This is from about 6 months ago. I turned the screen toward her, showing a screenshot of her texting her sister.
So it is a huge challenge.
God, I can't wait until that old bat finally moves out. Then we can turn her room into the home gym I've been wanting. Stephanie lunged for my phone, but I pulled it back smoothly. There are dozens more, I said conversationally. David was apparently very good at documentation. This next one is particularly enlightening. It's you texting Marcus about how you've been convincing David that I should contribute to household expenses when the mortgage was already budgeted from his salary. Stop. Stephanie's voice was barely a whisper. And then there's the email where you're laughing with your sister about how gullible I am. How easy it was to make me feel like a burden when you'd already planned to kick me out after David's death. I set the phone down and looked at her with what I hoped was mild curiosity. That was forward thinking of you, by the way, planning my eviction while David was still alive. Stephanie's composure finally cracked completely. He had no right to save private messages. Actually, he had every right. It was his house, and you were discussing his mother. I leaned back in my chair. The question is, what are we going to do about this situation? What do you want? The mask was completely off now, revealing the calculating woman underneath. Want? I don't want anything from you, Stephanie. I never did. Then why are you doing this?
So it is a huge challenge.
What's the point of humiliating me? I considered the question seriously.
And we have to change.
You know you're right. There's no point in humiliating you. You've done that perfectly well yourself. I don't understand. You threw me out of my home the day after my son's funeral. You told me I was worthless, that David felt sorry for me, that I'd contributed nothing to your household. I stood up slowly. But here's what you didn't understand about David. He saw everything. Every cruel comment, every manipulation, every lie you told. Stephanie was gripping the edge of the table, her knuckles white. And you want to know the really beautiful part? I continued. He documented all of it not to hurt you, but to protect me, because he knew that once he was gone, you'd show your true colors. You can't prove any of this would hold up in court.
In times of great uncertainty,
I laughed, and the sound surprised even me. Oh, sweetie, I'm not taking you to court. Stephanie blinked, clearly confused by my response.
I thought it was
You're
just
not.
about
Why would I?
Putting words
You've already
on
given
paper.
me everything I need.
Thought it would come to
I don't
this,
understand what you're talking about.
But here we are.
I pulled out the folder from David's safety deposit box and placed it on the table between us. David left me more than just text screenshots, Stephanie. He left me 5 years' worth of evidence showing exactly how you've been manipulating both of us.
So it is a huge challenge.
She stared at the folder like it might bite her. Bank statements showing that the house payments have been automatically deducted from David's salary for the entire time I've been living here. Email chains between you and Marcus discussing how to handle the Eleanor situation. phone. Credit card statements showing luxury purchases made on the same days you told David we couldn't afford basic household items. Stephanie's breathing was becoming shallow.
But here we
David
are.
saved all of that. David documented everything, including copies of the emails you sent to your friends, calling him a pushover, and joking about how easy it was to manipulate him into thinking I was a financial burden. That hit home.
So it is a huge challenge.
Stephanie flinched,
and
as
it's
if
a
I'd
huge
slapped her.
World has
You want to know what I
changed,
found most interesting?
And we have to change
I continued
with it.
opening the folder. This
In
email
times of
thread
great
where you and Marcus
uncertainty,
discuss
it's
your
often
long-term
the
plans to
small,
have me declared
consistent
incompetent
actions
so
that
you could
provide the
access
most
my
comfort
pension and Social
stability.
Security.
First started
That's
writing,
not, we never actually.
I thought it was just
no,
about
you never actually followed
putting
through.
words on paper.
Know why?
Thought it would come
Because
to
David
this.
figured out what you were planning
But here
and took
we
steps
are.
to protect me. Stephanie's eyes widened.
Often the small,
What steps you don't have
consistent
anything worth
actions
protecting?
that provide the most comfort
Don't I?
and stability.
I smiled pleasantly.
Huge opportunity.
That's interesting because according to these investment statements, I apparently have quite a bit
so
worth
it is
protecting.
a huge challenge.
Money that David
and
had
it's
been
a huge
carefully growing for the
world
past
has
5 years.
changed,
That's
and we
impossible.
have to change
You're
with
living in
it.
a hotel. I'm living in a
In
hotel
times of
because I
great
choose to be there while I
it's
figure out
often
my
the
next
small,
move, not because I
consistent
can't afford
actions
better.
that provide the
The
most
silence
comfort
stretched
and
between us
stability.
as Stephanie
First started
processed this
writing,
information. I
I
could
thought it
practically
was
see the
just
wheels
about
turning in her head trying to
putting
calculate
words on
how much
paper.
money we might be talking
Thought
about.
it would come to this.
How much? She
But
finally
here we
asked.
are.
Excuse me. How much money did David
Often the
leave you?
small,
I
consistent
closed the folder and
actions
stood up.
That provide the
That's
most
really none
comfort
of your
and
business,
stability.
is it? I'm his
Huge
wife.
opportunity.
I have a right to know. You had a right to know what your husband left you, which, as
So
I
it is a
recall, was
huge
quite generous.
challenge,
The
and
house,
it's a
the
huge
cars, the life
world
insurance,
has
his retirement
changed,
accounts.
and we have to
I'd say you
change
made
with
out
it.
very well. Stephanie shot to
In
her
times
feet,
of
her
great
chair scraping
uncertainty,
against the hardwood
it's often
floor.
the small,
You manipulative
consistent
old witch.
actions
You're
that
trying to
provide the
steal
most
what's
comfort
rightfully
and
mine.
stability.
Steal.
First started writing,
I raised an eyebrow.
I
How
thought it
exactly
was
would I be
just
stealing
about
anything?
putting
Everything
words
I
on
have was
paper.
given to me by my son,
it would
who
come
had
to
every
this.
legal right to dispose of
But
his
here we
assets
are.
as he saw fit. He was my husband.
Often
Yes,
the
he was.
small,
And apparently he
consistent
knew
actions
exactly what
that
kind of
provide
wife
the
you
most
were.
comfort and
The
stability.
words hung in the air like a
Huge
challenge.
opportunity.
Stephanie's face was flushed with anger and something that looked like panic.
So it is a huge
I want to see those
challenge,
bank statements,
and
she
it's a
demanded.
huge
I'm
opportunity.
sure you
World
do.
has changed,
Eleanor,
and we have to change
I'm
with
warning
it.
you. You're warning me.
In times of
I
great
laughed again,
uncertainty,
feeling oddly
it's often the
liberated.
small, consistent actions
Stephanie.
that provide the most comfort
Honey, you
and
threw me out of
stability.
your house.
First started
You humiliated
writing,
me at my son's funeral.
I thought it
You
was
made it
just
clear that you
about
consider me worthless and
putting
unwanted.
words on paper.
What exactly do you think you can
Thought it
threaten
would
me with
come
now?
to this.
Stephanie
But here
stared
we
at me
are.
for a long moment, and I could see her recalibrating.
First
The
started
threats weren't
writing,
working, so she was switching
I
tactics.
thought it was just
Eleanor,
about
please let's be
putting
reasonable
words
about
on
this.
paper.
Her voice took on a
Thought it
pleading
would
tone.
come to this.
I know I've been difficult
But
since
here we
David
are.
died. I was grieving. I wasn't thinking clearly.
Often the
But we're
small,
family.
consistent
We should work
actions
together.
that provide the
Family,
most comfort
I
and
repeated
stability.
thoughtfully.
A huge
Yes, you mentioned that
opportunity.
before, right after you told me David felt sorry for me and that I'd never
So it
contributed
is a
anything to your
huge
household.
challenge,
I didn't
and
mean
it's a
that.
huge
I was
opportunity.
upset.
The world has
I said things I
changed,
didn't mean.
and we have to
Oh, but you
change
did
with
mean
it.
them. That's what makes David's
In times of
documentation
great
so valuable.
uncertainty,
He
it's
saved
often
you
the
saying the
small,
same things multiple
consistent
times to
actions
multiple
that
people
provide the
over a
most
period of
comfort and
years.
stability.
Stephanie's
First
mask
started
slipped
writing,
again. What do you
I
want from
thought
me,
it
Eleanor?
was just about
An apology.
putting words
Fine.
on paper.
I'm sorry. I'm
Thought
sorry
it
I
would
hurt
come
your
to
feelings.
this.
I'm sorry I asked
But
you to
here
leave.
we are.
I'm sorry for everything. Now, can we please discuss this
Often
money
the
situation like
small,
adults?
consistent
There's nothing to
actions
discuss.
that provide
Of
the
course
most
there is.
comfort and
If
stability.
David left you a significant
Huge
amount of money, we
opportunity.
need to plan how to manage it responsibly. I know excellent financial advisors.
So it is a
I could help you
huge
invest it
challenge,
properly.
and it's a
You mean
huge
you could help me
world
spend
has
it properly?
changed, and we
That's
have
not
to
what I
change
said.
with it.
It's what you meant. I
In
picked up my
times of
purse.
great uncertainty,
Stephanie let
it's
me be
often
very
the
clear about
small,
something.
consistent
The money
actions
David
that
left me
provide the
isn't
most
an
comfort
inheritance
and
that fell into my lap.
First started
It's the
writing,
return on the $40,000
thought
I
it was
gave you for
just
your
about
house down payment,
putting
plus
words
5
on
years of
paper.
careful investment.
Thought it would come to
Her
this.
mouth fell open.
But here we are.
$40,000. Did you think it was a gift? Did you
Often the
think I just
small,
handed over my life
consistent
savings out
actions
of the goodness
that
of my
provide the
heart
most comfort
with no
and
expectation
stability.
of repayment?
Huge opportunity.
David said. He said it was a family contribution. David was trying to preserve your pride and mine, but he never forgot it was a loan. I could see her mind racing, trying to process this new information. If you invested $40,000 5 years ago and David had been growing it, how much is it worth now? She whispered. I pulled out my phone and opened one of the banking apps the bank had helped me set up. The account balance filled the screen and I turned it toward her. $185,000. Stephanie's face went white.
But here we are.
She grabbed the edge of the table to steady herself. That's impossible. David was a careful investor, and apparently he was very motivated to make sure his mother was taken care of. But that's almost as much as the life insurance policy.
So
yes,
it is a huge
That
challenge.
money should be part of the estate. It should be split between us.
And we have to change with it.
Based on what legal principle? Based on the fact that I'm his wife and you're just his mother. The casual cruelty in those words, just his mother, hit me like a physical blow. But instead of pain, I felt something else.
It was just
clarity.
Putting
you know what,
words
Stephanie?
on paper.
You're absolutely right.
It would come to
I am
this.
just his mother. The woman who gave birth to him raised him, supported him through college, and lent him the down payment for the house where you threw me out like garbage. I stood up and slung my purse over my shoulder, and apparently that was enough for David to make sure I'd never have to depend on anyone's charity again.
And it's
Wait,
a huge opportunity.
Stephanie called as I headed toward the door.
And we have
Eleanor,
to change
wait.
with it.
We can work this out. Please, just sit down.
In times of great
Let's talk about this
uncertainty,
rationally.
It's often the small,
I paused in the doorway
consistent
and turned back
actions
to face her.
that provide the most
What
comfort
exactly
and
do you think we
stability.
need to work out?
First
The money
started
situation,
writing,
our relationship?
I thought it was
Everything.
just about
She was speaking
putting
quickly now,
words on paper.
panic making her voice tight.
Thought it would come to
Look,
this.
I know I made mistakes.
But here we are.
I was stressed about David's death, worried about finances,
Often
and I
the
took it out on
small,
you.
consistent
But we can
actions
fix this.
That provide the most comfort
I'm sure you were
and
worried about
stability.
finances,
A
I said
huge
quietly.
opportunity.
But not for the reasons you're claiming. What's that supposed to mean?
So
I
it
pulled
is a
out one more
huge
document from
challenge,
David's folder,
and it's a huge
one I'd been
opportunity.
saving for
The world has
last.
changed,
It means David
and we
also
have to
documented
change
your
with it.
spending habits, Stephanie, including
In
the
times of great
$15,000 you
uncertainty,
charged to
it's
credit
often
cards
the
in the month
small,
before he died.
consistent actions
Her face
that
went
provide
ashen.
the most comfort
Spa
and stability.
treatments, designer
First
clothes, a
started
weekend in New
writing,
York with your sister,
I thought
all
it
while
was
telling
just
David
about
you were worried about money
putting
for
words on
groceries.
paper.
That's not, I
Thought
wasn't.
it would come to this.
You weren't what?
But here
Planning
we
to
are.
live off his life insurance while throwing out the inconvenient
Often the
mother-in-law
small,
who might interfere
consistent
with your
actions
lifestyle.
that provide the most
Stephanie
comfort
collapsed
and
back
stability.
into her chair,
A huge
the
opportunity.
fight going out of her. You don't understand the pressure I was under. What
So it
pressure?
is a
Everyone
huge
expected me to be
challenge,
the perfect wife,
and
the
it's a
perfect
huge
hostess,
opportunity. World
David's
has
colleagues, the
changed,
neighbors, my
and
family.
we have to
Do you
change
have
with
any
it.
idea how exhausting it is to
In
maintain
times
appearances?
of great uncertainty,
I
it's
looked at her
often the
sitting there in her
small,
designer dress
consistent
in her beautiful
actions
house,
that
surrounded
provide
by
the most
luxury,
comfort and
complaining
stability.
about the burden
First
of
started
appearances.
writing,
No, Stephanie,
I
I
thought it
don't,
was just
because I was
about
too busy actually taking
putting
care of your
words on
husband while you
paper.
were busy spending his money.
Thought it would come to this.
I loved David.
But
You
here
loved
we
what
are.
David could provide for you. There's a difference.
Often the
She was
small,
crying now.
consistent actions
Ugly tears that
provide
smeared
the
her
most
perfect
comfort
makeup.
and stability.
I can't lose
Huge
everything.
opportunity.
I can't go back to being nobody. You're not nobody, Stephanie.
So it
You're
is a
David's
huge
widow.
challenge.
You inherited
and
a
it's a huge
$500,000
opportunity.
house,
Has
a
changed,
$200,000
and we
life
have to
insurance
change with
policy,
it.
and his retirement accounts.
In times of
You're
great
financially
uncertainty,
set for life
it's
if you
often
manage
the
it properly,
small,
but
consistent
it's not enough for
actions
the life I
that provide
planned.
the most comfort
Then maybe
and
you planned the
stability.
wrong life.
First started writing.
I walked toward the door again,
I thought
and
it
this
was
time she
just
didn't try to
about
stop me with words.
putting words on
Instead, there
paper.
was a soft thud
Thought it
behind
would
me.
come to
I
this.
turned to see Stephanie slumped
But here
forward
we
in her
are.
chair, her face gray, her breathing shallow.
Often the
For a moment,
small,
I thought she might
consistent
actually be
actions
having a medical
that provide
emergency.
The most comfort and
Then I
stability.
realized what I was
Huge
seeing.
opportunity.
Complete defeat. The moment when someone realizes they've lost everything
So it
they
is a
thought they were
huge
entitled to,
challenge,
and there's
it's
no
a huge
manipulation or
opportunity.
charm
World has
or cruelty
changed,
that can get it
and
back.
we have to change with
I
it.
can't, she whispered.
In times
I
of
can't
great
lose
uncertainty,
everything.
it's
You're
often
not
the
losing
small,
everything, Stephanie.
consistent actions
You're losing the
that
things that
provide
never
the most
belonged to
comfort
you in the
and
first
stability.
place.
First started
I left her
writing,
there in her expensive dining
thought
room,
it was
surrounded by
just
her
about
wedding china and her
putting
carefully
words on
constructed
paper.
life, and
Thought it
walked
would
out
come
into
to
the
this.
sunshine of my new
But
beginning.
here we are.
The weight I'd been carrying since David's death, perhaps
Often
even
the
before,
small,
lifted with
consistent
each step
actions
toward my car.
that provide the most
The next
comfort
morning,
and
I woke with a
stability.
clarity and
Huge
purpose I hadn't
opportunity.
felt in weeks. With the documentation from the safety deposit box and access to the investment accounts, I could finally start planning my future. My first call was to Joan. You won't believe what happened, I told her, recounting the confrontation with Stephanie and the contents of the safety deposit box. Oh my God, Eleanor, I knew David was a good boy, but this is extraordinary. He must have suspected she would try something like this. I think he knew exactly who he married, I admitted. Maybe not at first, but certainly by the time he started documenting everything. So what are you going to do now? Are you still coming to stay with me? I considered the question. The invitation was tempting Joan, and I had always gotten along well, and Arizona's climate would be a nice change from cold New England winters. But something held me back. I think I'm going to stay put for now. I have the resources to get my own place, and all my friends and connections are here, but I promise to come visit soon. After hanging up with Joan, I called Frank Williams, a financial advisor whose card David had included in the safety deposit box, with a note saying he was trustworthy. I made an appointment for the following day to discuss how to manage my newfound assets. Next, I returned to the senior apartment complex, where I'd put my name on the waiting list. With proof of my financial stability, I was able to secure a lovely one-bedroom unit with a small balcony overlooking a community garden. I could move in at the end of the month. As I drove back to the hotel, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but I answered anyway. Mrs. Fairfield, this is Marcus, Stephanie's brother. We need to talk. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. I don't think we have anything to discuss, Marcus. Look, I know Stephanie can be difficult, but she's devastated. She feels like you're trying to take advantage of the situation. The irony was almost too much. Take advantage. I pulled into the hotel parking lot and turned off the engine. Marcus, I have copies of emails between you and your sister discussing ways to have me declared incompetent so you could access my pension and Social Security. So forgive me if I don't believe you're concerned about who's taking advantage of whom. There was a long pause. I never would have gone through with that plan. But you discussed it. You gave her legal advice on how to do it. You encouraged it. It was just talk. Stephanie gets these ideas, and sometimes it's easier to go along with them than to argue. I've spent the last 2 years going along with Stephanie's ideas, and look where that got me. Homeless at 67 with nothing but the clothes I could fit in my car. Another pause longer this time. I didn't know she kicked you out. I thought you left voluntarily. Is that what she told you? She said you were uncomfortable staying in the house after David died, that you wanted your own space to grieve. I almost laughed at the audacity of the lie. Marcus, your sister told me to get out the day after the funeral. Said she needed her privacy and couldn't deal with complications like me. She gave me 24 hours to pack. Jesus. His voice was softer now. I'm sorry, Eleanor. I didn't know. There's a lot you don't know, Marcus. And I'd suggest you be careful about giving legal advice to your sister regarding my assets. David's documentation is quite thorough, and I don't think it would reflect well on your professional reputation. Are you threatening me? No, I'm stating a fact. Your sister threw me out of my home when I was at my most vulnerable. She planned to try to have me declared incompetent to steal my pension, and you helped her. So no, I don't particularly care about her feelings right now. I'm going to live my life with the money my son legally left me. If that upsets Stephanie, that's her problem, not mine. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From a sense of power I'd almost forgotten I possessed. The power to stand up for myself, to set boundaries, to refuse to be manipulated. The next day, Frank Williams walked me through David's investment strategy. He had spread the money across a mix of index funds, blue-chip stocks, and bonds, a conservative but steady approach. He was very systematic about it, Frank explained, showing me the quarterly statements. Every month he added more money to the accounts, sometimes small amounts, sometimes larger. But he never missed a month in 5 years. And all of this is legally mine. I asked, still not quite believing it. Absolutely. The accounts are in your name with David as the manager. Now that he's passed, you have full control. We spent 2 hours going over options for how to manage the money going forward. Frank suggested keeping most of the investments as they were. They were performing well and perhaps using some of the funds to secure my housing situation. You've got enough here to buy a small condo outright if you wanted to, he pointed out. Or you could continue renting and just use the investment income to supplement your pension. I left his office with a clear plan and a sense of security I hadn't felt since Robert died. David had given me more than money. He'd given me independence. On my way back to the hotel, I stopped at a small cafe for lunch. As I sat there enjoying a bowl of soup and watching people pass by on the street, my phone pinged with a text from Stephanie. We need to talk. I've consulted a lawyer. What you're doing isn't right. I set the phone down without responding. Let her consult all the lawyers she wanted. The money was mine legally and morally. David had made sure of that. Another ping. Eleanor, please. I'm not in a good place right now. I need your help. This time I did respond. Stephanie, I understand you're going through a difficult time, but I can't be the one to help you through it. You made your feelings about me very clear. I'm respecting your wishes by staying away from you and your home. Her reply came almost immediately. Our home. It was David's home too, and yours. I was wrong to make you leave. You can come back. I stared at the text, hardly believing what I was reading. Was this another manipulation, or had she genuinely had a change of heart? Either way, it didn't matter. That chapter of my life was closed. Thank you for the offer, but I've made other arrangements. I found a lovely apartment in a senior community. I move in at the end of the month. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Can I come see it? I don't think that's a good idea, Stephanie. I think we both need time and space to adjust to our new reality. Are you going to tell people what I did? What I said? There it was. She wasn't concerned about my welfare. She was worried about her reputation. I have no intention of discussing our private matters with anyone. What happened between us is between us. Relief was palpable even in her text response. Thank you. I appreciate that. I put the phone away and finished my lunch thinking about how differently things might have gone if David hadn't been so vigilant. If he hadn't seen the danger coming and taken steps to protect me. Where would I be now? Still living in a hotel, moving in with Joan out of desperation, watching my savings dwindle day by day. Instead, I had options, choices, agency over my own life. As I walked back to my car, I noticed a "For Lease" sign in the window of a small storefront. It had once been a bookstore, according to the faded lettering still visible on the glass. Something about it called to me, and I found myself stepping inside. The space was empty, but full of potential. Hardwood floors, tall windows letting in natural light, built-in bookshelves along one wall. Interested in the space. A voice startled me from my reverie. A middle-aged man with kind eyes stood in the doorway. Oh, I was just looking. I apologized. It's a beautiful space. Used to be Thompson's Books. Family business for 40 years, but the last Thompson retired last month. Shame to see it sitting empty. I ran my hand along one of the bookshelves, thinking of my own shelves of books currently in storage. Books I'd collected over decades of teaching books Robert and I had read together, books I'd saved for David. How much is the lease, I heard myself asking. The man, the property manager, I assumed named a figure that was reasonable, especially given the prime location on Main Street. I'll think about it, I told him, taking his card. As I drove back to the hotel, an idea began to form. What if I didn't just find a new place to live? What if I started something new entirely? A small business, perhaps. A bookshop of my own specializing in classics and educational materials. I'd spent 30 years teaching high school English. I knew books. I knew what students and teachers needed. With David's investment providing a financial cushion, I could afford to take a risk. And at 67, what was I saving myself for? If not now, when? Back at the hotel, I opened my laptop and began researching what it would take to open a small bookstore. The logistics seemed daunting, but not impossible. I'd need to create a business plan, apply for permits, set up accounts with distributors. But first, I needed to be sure this wasn't just an emotional reaction to recent events. I needed to think it through carefully. I called Joan again. A bookstore. At your age, she sounded skeptical. Eleanor, Haven't you been through
Thought it
enough
would come
changes
to
lately?
this.
That's just
But
it,
here we
I
are.
explained. All the changes have been forced on me. This would be
Often the
my
small,
choice. Something I
consistent
decided to
actions
do,
that
not
provide
something
the
that
most
happened to me.
comfort and
I hear
stability.
you, but
A
retail
huge
is hard work.
opportunity.
Long hours, thin margins. Are you sure you're up for it?
So it is a
I'm not
huge
talking about
challenge,
competing with Barnes
and
&
it's a
Noble
huge
or Amazon.
world has
I'm thinking
changed,
something small,
and we
specialized.
have to change with it.
Maybe focusing on educational
In
materials,
times of great
classic
uncertainty,
literature.
it's often the
I could host
small,
book clubs, tutoring
consistent
sessions,
actions
use
that
my
provide
teaching
the most
background.
comfort and stability.
Joan's tone softened.
First started writing.
You've always loved books.
I thought
and
it was
teaching.
just about
I can see how this might
putting
work for
words
you.
on paper.
Just promise me you'll
Thought
think
it
it
would
through
come to
carefully
this.
before you sign anything.
But here we are.
I promised, and we talked a bit longer about logistics and potential
Often the
pitfalls.
small,
By the
consistent
time we hung up,
actions
Joan
that
was
provide the
cautiously
most comfort
supportive,
and
I was
stability.
even more
A
excited
huge
about the
opportunity.
possibility. The next day, I drove back to the empty bookstore and took
So
more
it
photos.
is a huge
I
challenge,
measured the space,
and
noted
it's a
the
huge
electrical
opportunity.
outlets,
World
the
has
lighting, the
changed,
storage area in
and
the
we
back.
have to
I could
change with
envision
it.
exactly how I would set it up.
In times
Children's
of great
books in the sunny
uncertainty,
corner near the
it's
window,
often the small,
classics along the
consistent
wall,
actions
a small
that
seating
provide the
area
most
for book
comfort and
discussions.
stability.
As I was
First
leaving,
started
my phone
writing,
rang. It was Mr.
I thought
Morrison,
it was
David's
just
lawyer.
about
Mrs.
putting
Fairfield,
words on paper.
I hope I'm not disturbing you.
Thought it would come
I
to
wanted to
this.
check in and see if you had
But
any
here we
questions
are.
about accessing the accounts or documents your son left you.
Often the small,
Actually, Mr.
consistent
Morrison,
actions
I do
that
have a
provide
question.
The most comfort
I'm
and
considering
stability.
starting a small
A
business.
huge opportunity.
Would there be any legal complications with using some of the investment funds for that purpose?
So it is a huge
Not at all.
challenge.
The money
and it's
is
a
yours
huge
to use as you see
world
fit.
has changed,
Though I would
and
recommend
we have to
consulting with a
change
financial
it.
advisor before making any major
In times
investments.
of great uncertainty,
I've already spoken
it's
with Frank
often the
Williams.
small,
David left me
consistent
his card.
actions that provide
Excellent
the most
choice.
comfort and
Frank is
stability.
very competent.
First started
If
writing,
you need any help with the legal
I
aspects
thought it
of
was
starting a
just
business
about
licensing permits, that
putting
sort of thing,
words on
I'd be
paper.
happy to assist.
Thought it would
David
come
was a
to
valued
this.
client, and I'd like to help
But
his
here we
mother if
are.
I can. His kindness touched me.
Often the
Thank you,
small,
Mr. Morrison.
consistent
I
actions
appreciate that.
provide the most comfort
One more
and
thing,
stability.
Mrs. Fairfield.
A huge
I received a
opportunity.
call from Marcus Henderson yesterday. He was asking about the legality of
So
David's
it is a
designation
huge
of the
challenge,
safety deposit
and
box
it's a huge
contents.
opportunity. World
I'm not
has
surprised.
changed,
What
and
did you
we
tell
have
him?
to
I
change
informed him
with
that
it.
the provision was perfectly legal
In
and
times
properly
of great
executed.
uncertainty,
I
it's
also
often
mentioned
the
that any
small,
attempt to challenge it
consistent
would likely be
actions that
unsuccessful
provide the most
and
comfort
potentially
and
embarrassing
stability.
for all
First
involved,
started
given the
writing,
nature of some of the
I thought
documentation
it was
David
just
collected.
about
I smiled to
putting words
myself,
on
imagining
paper.
Marcus's reaction.
Thought it would come
Thank
to
you,
this.
Mr. Morrison. I appreciate
we
your
are.
discretion. After hanging up, I took one last
First
look around the
started
empty
writing,
bookstore. It felt right.
I thought it was
It felt
just
like the
about
beginning of something, not
putting
the end.
words on paper.
I pulled out the property
Thought it
manager's
would come
card and
to
dialed
this.
his number.
But
Hello,
here
this
we
is
are.
Eleanor Fairfield. I'd like to discuss leasing the bookstore space.
Often the small,
3 days after
consistent
confronting
actions
Stephanie,
that
I
provide the
received a
most
certified
comfort
letter
and
from a law
stability.
firm I didn't
A huge
recognize.
opportunity.
Henderson, Blackwell and Associates. My stomach tightened as I tore
So
open
it
the
is a
envelope
huge
expecting legal
challenge,
threats about
and it's
David's
a huge
investment accounts.
opportunity. World has changed,
Instead, I found a formal
and we
notice
have to
informing me
change
that
with it.
Stephanie was challenging the provision in
In times
David's
of
will
great
regarding the
uncertainty,
safety deposit
it's
box.
often the small,
The letter claimed the
consistent
funds were
actions
marital
that
assets
provide the most
that should have been
comfort and
included in
stability.
the estate
First
inventory
started writing,
and demanded I attend a
I thought
mediation
it was
session the
just
following
about
week. I called
putting
Mr.
words on
Morrison
paper.
immediately.
Thought
She's
it would
actually
come to
suing me.
this.
I
But
paced the
here we
small
are.
hotel room phone pressed to my ear. It's not a
Often
lawsuit
the
yet,
small,
just a demand for
consistent
mediation,
actions that
standard
provide the most
procedure before
comfort and
actual
stability.
litigation.
A huge
Don't worry, Mrs.
opportunity.
Fairfield. This is mostly posturing. The documentation your son left is
So it
quite
is a
clear about the
huge
origins of
challenge,
that money.
and it's a huge
Still,
opportunity.
the letter
World
had
has
shaken
changed,
me. After our
and we have to
confrontation,
change
I'd
with
hoped
it.
Stephanie would accept the situation and
In
move
times
on,
of great uncertainty,
but it seemed she wasn't
it's
going
often
down
the
without
small,
a fight.
consistent
I met with
actions
Mr. Morrison
that
the
provide
next
the
day
most
to prepare
comfort
for the
and
mediation.
stability. First
His
started
office felt
writing,
different now, less intimidating,
thought it was
more like a
just about
sanctuary. He
putting
suggested
words on
bringing all
paper.
the documentation from
Thought
the
it would
safety
come to
deposit
this.
box, particularly
But
the
here we
records
are.
showing the initial $40,000 transfer
Often the
from my
small,
account to
consistent
David and
actions
Stephanie's.
that provide the most
Best
comfort
case
and
scenario,
stability.
we
A
resolve
huge
this quietly in
opportunity.
mediation. Worst case, they file a formal challenge,
So
which
it is
I
a
believe would be
huge challenge,
unsuccessful given
and
the
it's a
evidence,
huge
but could be
opportunity. World has
costly and
changed,
time-consuming.
and we have to
And
change with it.
emotionally draining, I added.
In times of great
That too,
uncertainty,
I'm afraid.
it's often
Probate
the small,
disputes within
consistent
families often are.
actions that
But
provide
remember,
the
Mrs.
most
Fairfield,
comfort and
you have the
stability.
stronger position
First
here both
started
legally
writing,
and morally. We just need to make that clear to the mediator. I spent the weekend organizing the documentation, creating a chronological timeline of the investment accounts, and preparing myself mentally for another confrontation with Stephanie. The business lease for the bookstore sat unsigned on the desk. I decided to wait until this legal threat was resolved before committing. The morning of the mediation, I dressed carefully in a navy suit that had served me well through years of parent-teacher conferences. Professional, dignified, but not flashy. I fastened pearl earrings, a gift from Robert on our 20th anniversary, and slipped into sensible pumps. I wanted to project confidence, not arrogance. The mediation was scheduled for 10 a.m. at a neutral conference facility downtown. I arrived 15 minutes early to find Mr. Morrison already waiting in the lobby, briefcase in hand, his calm demeanor reassuring. Mrs. Fairfield, good morning. Are you ready? As ready as I'll ever be. Inside the conference room, Stephanie sat with Marcus and another man I didn't recognize, presumably their lawyer. Stephanie was dressed in black, as if still in deep mourning, though her designer outfit and perfect manicure suggested a very particular kind of grief. She didn't look at me when I entered, but Marcus gave me a brief nod of acknowledgement. The mediator, a silver-haired woman named Dr. Hampton, introduced herself and explained the process with practiced efficiency. This is an informal opportunity to discuss concerns and perhaps reach a resolution before formal legal proceedings. I'll ask each side to present their position, and then we'll see if there's common ground. Stephanie's lawyer went first, a slick-looking man in his 50s with an expensive suit and an affected manner of speaking. My client contends that the funds in question, approximately $185,000, represent marital assets that were improperly excluded from the estate. Mr. Fairfield's designation of these funds to his mother circumvented normal estate procedures and potentially deprived Mrs. Fairfield of her rightful share of marital property. Mr. Morrison's response was calm and methodical. The funds in question originated as a loan from Mrs. Eleanor Fairfield to the couple for their house down payment 5 years ago. Mr. Fairfield chose to repay this loan by investing the money on his mother's behalf. All accounts were properly established in Mrs. Eleanor Fairfield's name, with Mr. David Fairfield serving only as an investment manager. These were never marital assets to begin with. Stephanie's lawyer scoffed, the sound echoing in the quiet room. There's no documentation of any loan agreement. Mrs. Fairfield has provided no evidence that this money wasn't simply a gift to the couple, as is common in many families. I opened my folder and pulled out a document I'd found among David's papers. Actually, there is documentation. This is an email from me to David dated 5 years ago, confirming that the $40,000 was a loan to be repaid when they were financially stable. David responded acknowledging this arrangement. Stephanie's face paled as the mediator reviewed the email exchange. I hadn't mentioned this document during our confrontation, saving it as insurance against exactly this type of challenge. Furthermore, I continued pulling out bank statements. These documents show the transfer of funds from my account to their joint account, followed by the establishment of investment accounts in my name. The paper trail is quite clear. The mediator nodded thoughtfully. Mrs. Stephanie Fairfield. Would you like to respond to this evidence? Stephanie leaned forward, her voice tight with controlled anger. That email doesn't constitute a formal loan agreement. There were no terms, no interest rates, no repayment schedule. It was a family contribution to our house purchase. David never discussed repaying it, because he was already doing so through these investments, Mr. Morrison countered. The documentation shows regular contributions over 5 years. Mrs. Eleanor Fairfield may not have been aware of this arrangement, but that doesn't invalidate it. The mediation continued for another hour, with Stephanie's lawyer arguing technicalities, while Mr. Morrison calmly refuted each point. Throughout it all, Marcus remained strangely silent, occasionally glancing at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Finally, the mediator called a break. I suggest the parties take 30 minutes to consider their positions. Perhaps there's room for compromise here. In a private room with Mr. Morrison, I sank into a chair feeling emotionally drained. You're doing very well, Mrs. Fairfield. Their case is weak, and I think they're beginning to realize it. What compromise could there possibly be? I didn't take anything that belonged to Stephanie. This money was always mine. Sometimes in mediation, a small concession can avoid a lengthy court battle, even when you're in the right. Would you consider? Before he could finish, there was a knock at the door. Marcus stood there alone, looking uncomfortable. May I speak with Mrs. Fairfield privately? Mr. Morrison looked to me for confirmation.
So
I nodded, curious about what David's brother-in-law wanted to say without his sister or lawyer present.
And
Marcus closed the door behind him and remained standing, hands shoved in his pockets.
I
need to tell you something. Stephanie doesn't know I'm here.
That provide the most
I
comfort
waited, saying
and
nothing. I can't do this anymore. This whole challenge to the will, it's wrong. I told Stephanie it was a bad idea, but she's not thinking clearly. What are you saying, Marcus? He pulled a folded paper from his jacket pocket. This is an email Stephanie sent me 3 months ago, right around the time David updated his will. She was complaining about him meeting with his lawyer without telling her. She wrote, I think he knows about the credit cards. He's been asking questions about where the money goes every month. I took the printed email, scanning its contents. Stephanie's own words condemned her. I've been so careful to hide the statements, but he must have found them. I'm worried he might change his will or something. Do you think he can cut me out? I showed this to our lawyer this morning, Marcus continued. He said it seriously undermined Stephanie's position. It suggests she knew she was hiding financial information from David, and he may have discovered it. It supports your claim that David was deliberately setting aside money for you because he was concerned about how Stephanie managed finances. Why are you giving me this? I asked, genuinely puzzled. She's your sister. She is, and I love her. But what she's doing, what we discussed doing to you before David died, it's wrong. I've been making excuses for her behavior for years, and I can't do it anymore. David was a good man. He deserved better than this. And so do you. The honesty was unexpected and disarming. For the first time, I saw Marcus not as Stephanie's accomplice, but as someone caught between loyalty to his sister and his own moral compass. Thank you for this, Marcus. It can't have been easy. He nodded, avoiding my eyes. I'm going to tell Stephanie and our lawyer that I can't continue supporting this challenge. She won't be happy, but that's her problem now. Before he reached the door, I had a question. Marcus, why now?
In times of great uncertainty,
you could have stopped this before the mediation began. He paused, his hand on the doorknob. Last night, I found an old voicemail from David on my phone from about 4 months ago. He said he knew what Stephanie and I had been planning regarding you, and he was disappointed in me. Said he expected better from me as the older brother, the one who was supposed to set an example. I've been hearing his voice in my head all night. After Marcus left, I showed the email to Mr. Morrison, who looked it over with raised eyebrows. Well, this is quite the smoking gun, Mrs. Fairfield. I think we may have just won this case before it even becomes one. When we returned to the mediation room, the atmosphere had visibly shifted. Stephanie sat rigid in her chair, her face a mask of barely controlled rage. Her lawyer looked resigned, shuffling papers without his earlier confidence. Marcus sat apart from them, staring at his folded hands. The mediator called the session back to order. Have the parties had time to consider potential compromises? Stephanie's lawyer cleared his throat. After reviewing additional evidence and consulting with our clients, we're prepared to withdraw the challenge to Mr. Fairfield's designation of the safety deposit box contents. The mediator looked surprised at this sudden capitulation. Mrs. Stephanie Fairfield, do you concur with your attorney's statement? Stephanie's voice was barely above a whisper, choked with both anger and humiliation. Yes, I withdraw the challenge. Then I believe our business here is concluded, the mediator announced. The provisions of Mr. David Fairfield's will shall stand as written with the contents of safety deposit box E3537 belonging solely to Mrs. Eleanor Fairfield. As we gathered our papers to leave, Stephanie approached me. Her eyes red but burning with an emotion I couldn't quite name. This isn't over, Eleanor. You've turned my own brother against me. You've taken what should have been mine. You've ruined everything. I met her gaze steadily. I didn't turn Marcus against you, Stephanie. Your own actions did that. I didn't take anything that belonged to you. David made sure of that. And as for ruining everything, I think you managed that quite well on your own. She flinched as if I'd slapped her, then turned and stalked out of the room without another word. Outside the conference facility, Mr. Morrison shook my hand warmly. Congratulations, Mrs. Fairfield. I'd say this matter is definitively resolved. With the withdrawn challenge, Stephanie would have a very difficult time pursuing any further legal action. I thanked him for his help, feeling not triumph but a weary relief. The battle was over, but it had left me drained. On the drive back to the hotel, I passed the empty bookstore. On impulse, I pulled over and went inside. The space was still vacant, still full of possibility. The afternoon sun slanted through the large front windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air and casting golden rectangles on the hardwood floor. I could see it now. Shelves of books, comfortable chairs, a small counter for coffee and pastries, a place where stories lived and were shared. I called the property manager on the spot, Mr. Winters. This is Eleanor Fairfield. I'd like to sign the lease for the bookstore.
It's often
really?
The small,
That's great news, Mrs. Fairfield. When would you like to come in? How about right now? Within an hour, I had signed a 2-year lease with an option to renew. The monthly rent was reasonable, and the security deposit manageable with my new financial cushion.
But here we are.
Mr. Winters handed me the keys with a smile. Thompson's Books served this community for 40 years. I'm glad to see it continuing under new management. I stood in the empty store after he left keys clutched in my hand, suddenly overwhelmed by what I'd just committed to. At 67, I was starting a business for the first time. Was I crazy? But as I walked the perimeter touching the built-in shelves, imagining the layout, a sense of rightness settled over me. This was my next chapter. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. I hired a local carpenter to build additional shelving and a custom checkout counter. A sign painter created a beautiful storefront sign, Chapter 2 Books, in elegant serif lettering with a small tagline underneath, "Every ending is a new beginning." I ordered inventory, set up accounts with distributors, applied for permits, and installed a point-of-sale system that seemed impossibly complicated until a patient young man from the company spent 2 hours walking me through it. Meanwhile, I moved into my new apartment in the senior community. It was smaller than what I'd been used to, but the space was bright and well-designed, with a small balcony overlooking a courtyard garden. The community offered activities, a common dining room for those who didn't want to cook, and transportation services to local shopping centers. Most importantly, it was mine, a place where no one could tell me I was unwelcome. A month before the store opening, I placed an ad in the local college newspaper seeking a part-time assistant. Among the applicants was Rachel Chen, a literature major with a quiet intelligence and genuine passion for books. During her interview, she mentioned that her grandmother had taught high school English for 30 years. Like me, I said, surprised by the connection. I know. I looked you up online after seeing your ad. My grandmother spoke at a conference where you presented a paper on teaching Shakespeare to reluctant readers. She still has your handout in her teaching binder. The coincidence seemed like a good omen. I hired Rachel on the spot, and her energy and tech savvy proved invaluable as we prepared for the opening. She set up the store's website and social media accounts, implemented an inventory tracking system, and suggested we create a small section dedicated to local authors. The grand opening of Chapter 2 Books was scheduled for a Saturday in April, 2 months after David's death. I sent invitations to former colleagues, friends from my teaching days, and even a few of my favorite former students who still lived in the area. The night before, I stayed late arranging displays, checking inventory, and fretting over details, until Rachel gently insisted I go home and rest. Will anyone actually come tomorrow? I asked her, voicing my deepest fear. She smiled confidently. Mrs. Fairfield, half the English department from the high school has confirmed, plus the local book club, plus all those former students you invited. We're going to need more wine and cheese than we ordered. She was right. The opening exceeded my wildest expectations. From the moment we unlocked the doors at 10 a.m., the store was filled with well-wishers, book lovers, and curious locals. Former colleagues brought flowers and champagne. The local newspaper sent a photographer. By mid-afternoon, we'd sold over $2,000 worth of books and had to order more wine from the shop next door. As the crowd thinned in the early evening, Rachel approached me with a look of concern. There's a woman who's been standing outside for the past 20 minutes just watching. Should I ask her if she needs help? I glanced through the front window and felt a jolt of surprise.
So it is a huge
Stephanie stood on the sidewalk watching the activity inside. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, not her usual designer attire, and looked thinner than I remembered. I'll handle this, I told Rachel and stepped outside. Stephanie startled when the door opened, as if caught doing something she shouldn't. Hello, Stephanie. Would you like to come in? She
Thought
hesitated,
it would come to
then
this.
nodded, following me inside.
But here we are.
I led her to the small reading area in the back where we could
Often
speak
the
privately.
small, consistent
This is
actions that provide the
impressive,
most comfort
she said,
and stability.
looking around at the busy
Huge
store.
opportunity.
You did all this so quickly. When you know what you want, why wait?
So it
I
is a
gestured to a
huge
comfortable
challenge,
armchair.
and
Would
it's
you
a
like to
huge
sit?
World has
She perched on the
changed,
edge of the chair,
and we have to
hands
change
clasped
with it.
tightly in her lap.
In
I
times
sold
of
the
great
house,
uncertainty,
she said abruptly.
It's often the small,
Got less than I hoped,
consistent
but enough to
actions
pay off the
that
second
provide the
mortgage and
most
have something
comfort
left
and
over.
stability.
I hadn't
First
known
started
about a second
writing,
mortgage. That explained
thought
some
it
of her
was just
financial
about
desperation after David's
putting
death.
words on paper.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thought it would come to this.
Are you? She
But
looked
here
at me
we
directly
are.
for the first time. After everything I said and did
Often
to
the
you,
small,
are you really
consistent
sorry about anything
actions
that's happened
that
to me?
provide the most comfort
The
and
question
stability.
caught me off guard with
Huge
its raw
opportunity.
honesty. I'm sorry David died. I'm sorry for both of us about that.
So it is a huge
I'm sorry you
challenge,
felt you had to lie and
it's a
manipulate
huge
to get what you
world
wanted.
has changed.
And yes,
and
I'm
we
sorry
have
you
to
lost your
change
home
with
even
it.
though you threw me out of it.
In times
nodded
of great
slowly,
uncertainty,
accepting this
it's often
complicated
the
truth.
small,
I've
consistent
been in
actions
therapy,
that provide
trying
the
to
most
understand
comfort
why I
and
do the
stability.
things I do,
First started
why I saw
writing,
you as a threat instead of
I
family,
thought it was just
why I
about
lied to David about
putting
money for
words on
years.
paper.
I put down the glass
Thought
of
it
wine
would
I'd
come
been
to
nursing,
this.
giving her my full attention.
But here we are.
And have you found any answers? Some.
Often the
My childhood
small,
wasn't, my
consistent
family didn't have
actions
much.
that provide the
She
most
stared at her
comfort
hands
and
as she
stability.
spoke.
A huge
My father
opportunity.
left when I was 8. My mother worked 2 jobs and was barely home. We
So
moved
it is
constantly,
a huge
always
challenge,
one step ahead
and
of
it's
eviction.
a huge opportunity.
I promised myself I'd never live that way as an
and we have
adult.
to change with it.
The vulnerability in her voice was something
In
I'd
times
never
of great
heard before.
uncertainty,
A glimpse
it's
of the
often
wounded
small,
person beneath the
consistent
calculating
actions
exterior.
that provide the most
That must have been
comfort
very
and stability.
difficult.
First
It was,
started writing,
but it doesn't excuse
I
what
thought
I did
it
to
was
you,
just about
what I was planning to do
putting
before
words on
David found
paper.
out. I
Thought it
just
would
wanted
come
you to
to
know
this.
that I'm trying to understand
But here
it,
we are.
to be better. I wasn't sure what to say.
Often the
This
small,
wasn't the confrontation
consistent
I'd
actions
expected,
that
nor was it
provide the
quite an
most comfort
apology.
and stability.
Why are you
A huge
telling me this?
opportunity.
Stephanie? She took a deep breath. I found a job.
So it is a huge
administrative
challenge,
assistant at a law
and it's
firm.
a huge
Not
opportunity.
glamorous,
Has
but it's something.
changed,
I'm
and
living
we
in a
have
small
to change
apartment
with
now,
it.
learning to budget, learning
In
to
times
live
of
within my
great
means.
uncertainty, it's
That's
often the
good.
small,
I'm glad you're
consistent
finding your way.
actions that provide
Her
the
eyes
most
filled with
comfort
tears
and
that she
stability.
blinked away quickly.
First started writing,
I keep thinking about what you
I
said,
thought it was
that I
just
wasn't
about
nobody, that I had
putting
enough to be
words on
secure if
paper.
I managed it properly.
Thought it would come to
It was the
this.
first time anyone had
But
ever
here we
suggested
are.
I might be okay without all the trappings,
Often the small,
without the
consistent
house and the
actions
clothes and the
that
image.
provide the most comfort
Those things
and
aren't who you
stability.
are,
A
Stephanie.
huge
I'm
opportunity.
starting to realize that. She glanced around the store again. This place,
So
it's
it is
very
a
you.
huge challenge,
Quiet, thoughtful,
and
useful.
it's a huge opportunity.
I can see
World
why
has
it's successful.
changed,
It
and
wasn't
we
quite a
have to
compliment,
change
but it
with
wasn't an insult either. A
In
neutral
times of great
observation that somehow
uncertainty,
meant more
it's
than
often the
flowery
small,
praise would have.
consistent actions
Thank you.
that provide the most
An awkward
comfort
silence
and
fell
stability.
between us.
First started
Then Stephanie
writing,
reached into her purse and pulled
I
out a
thought
small
it was
box.
just about
I found this when I was
putting
packing up the
words on
house.
paper.
It was in David's desk
Thought it
drawer.
would come to this.
I think he meant for you to have it.
But here we are.
She placed the box on the small table between us.
First
I
started
opened it
writing,
to find Robert's watch, the one
I
he'd
thought
worn
it was
every day of
just
our
about
marriage, the one I'd
putting
given to
words
David
on
after
paper.
Robert died.
Thought
The
it would
sight
come
of it
to
brought
this.
an unexpected lump to my
But
throat.
here we are.
He treasured this, you know, wore it to every
Often
important
the
meeting,
small,
every special
consistent
occasion,
actions
said it
that
brought him
provide
luck.
the most comfort and
I know.
stability.
That's why
A
I gave
huge
it to him.
opportunity.
Stephanie's voice softened. He told me the story, how Robert had
So
been
it is
wearing
a
it the day he
huge
asked you to
challenge,
dance at that
and it's a
university
huge
mixer,
opportunity.
how you
World has
always said it was the
changed,
luckiest
and
moment
we
of
have
your
to
life.
change with it.
The memory made me smile
In
despite
times
myself.
of great uncertainty,
Robert, so
it's
handsome
often
and
the
nervous,
small,
checking his watch
consistent
repeatedly
actions
before working up
that
the
provide
courage
the
to
most
approach me.
comfort and stability.
The beginning of 40
First
wonderful
started
years
writing,
together. Thank you for
I
bringing
thought
this
it
to
was
me.
just
It means a
about
lot.
Putting
Stephanie
words on
nodded,
paper.
then stood to leave.
Thought it would
At the
come
door,
to
she
this.
paused. I don't expect
here
you to
we
forgive
are.
me, Eleanor. I don't know if I could in your position,
Often the
but I
small,
wanted you to know that I
consistent
understand
actions
now what
that provide
David
the
saw
most
in you,
comfort and
why he went to
stability.
such lengths
A
to
huge
protect you.
opportunity.
You deserved it. Before I could respond, she was gone, disappearing
So
into the
it is
crowd
a
of customers.
huge challenge,
Her visit left
and
me
it's a
thoughtful
huge
for days
opportunity. World
afterward,
has changed,
not ready to forgive
and we have
perhaps,
to change
but
with it.
appreciating the effort it must have taken for
In
her to
times
come
of
to
great
admit her faults,
uncertainty,
to
it's
return
often the
something
small,
meaningful without
consistent
being
actions
asked.
that provide
In the
the
months
most
that
comfort
followed,
and stability.
Chapter 2 books became more than just a business. It became a community hub. I started a weekly story hour for children, a monthly book club for adults, and a
But here
tutoring
we are.
program for high school students struggling with English literature.
Often the small,
Rachel's
consistent
youthful
actions
enthusiasm
that
balanced my
provide the
more
most
traditional
comfort and
approach,
stability.
drawing in younger
Huge
readers,
opportunity.
while I cultivated relationships with lifelong book lovers. Sales weren't
So it is a
spectacular, but they were
huge
steady,
challenge,
and the modest
it's a
income
huge
supplemented my
world
pension
has
nicely.
changed,
More
and we have
importantly,
to
the
change
store
with
gave
it.
me purpose and connection.
In
For the
times of
first
great
time since David's
uncertainty,
death,
it's often
perhaps
the
even before
small,
I felt truly
consistent
useful again,
actions that provide the
Marcus
most
stopped by the
comfort
store
and stability.
occasionally, browsing the
First
poetry
started
section
writing,
and making small talk.
I thought
From
it was
him,
just
I
about
learned that Stephanie was still
putting
working
words
at the
on
law
paper.
firm and continuing
Thought it would
therapy.
come to this.
She had joined a financial
But here
literacy
we
group
are.
and was slowly rebuilding her credit after years of
Often the
reckless
small,
spending. We
consistent
didn't discuss the
actions
past,
that
but
provide
his
the
visit
most
seemed like an
comfort and
olive
stability.
branch, a way of
Huge
maintaining some
opportunity.
tenuous connection. Then, 6 months after our confrontation,
So it is a
Marcus
huge
called to suggest we
challenge,
meet for coffee.
and it's a huge
I agreed,
opportunity.
curious
Has
about what he
changed,
wanted to discuss.
and we have to change
He
with
arrived
it.
at the cafe looking more relaxed than
In
I'd
times
ever
of
seen him
great
before,
uncertainty,
dressed
it's
in
often
casual
the
business
small,
attire
consistent
rather than his
actions
usual formal
that provide
suit.
the most comfort
Thank
and
you for meeting me,
stability.
Mrs. Fairfield.
First started
You can call me
writing,
Eleanor, you know.
I thought it
He
was
smiled
just
slightly,
about
acknowledging the olive
putting
branch.
words on paper.
Eleanor, then.
Thought
I
it would
wanted to
come
let you know
this.
that I've been helping Stephanie
But
get
here
back
we
on her
are.
feet. She's doing better, working steadily, keeping to a
Often
budget,
the
continuing
small,
with therapy.
consistent
I'm glad to
actions
hear it.
that provide
She
the
also
most
told me
comfort
she
and
returned David's
stability.
watch to
A
you.
huge opportunity.
Yes, that was unexpected but appreciated. Marcus stirred his coffee
So it is
thoughtfully,
a
clearly
huge
working up to
challenge,
something.
and it's a huge
I have a proposition
world
for you.
has changed,
It's about David's
and
legacy,
we have to change
something
with
I
it.
think he would have wanted. I waited,
In times
curious
of great
but cautious.
uncertainty, it's
Stephanie
often the
received a
small,
substantial life
consistent
insurance
actions
payout.
that
After
provide
paying
the
off
most
debts,
comfort
she
and
still has about
stability. First started
$100,000.
writing,
She's asked me to help her
I
establish
thought
a
it was
scholarship
just
in
about
David's name at his alma
putting
mater
words on
for
paper.
students studying finance
Thought
or
it would
business.
come to this.
I felt a tightness in
But
my
here we
chest,
are.
not pain, but a surprising wave of emotion.
Often the
That
small,
Stephanie would use the money
consistent
this way,
actions
rather
that
than on
provide the most
herself,
comfort and
represented a
stability.
significant
A
change.
huge opportunity.
That's a wonderful idea. I thought you might want to be involved.
So it is a huge
Perhaps contribute to the
challenge,
scholarship
and it's a
fund if you
huge
felt
opportunity.
inclined.
The world has changed,
Make it a joint effort
and we
to honor
have to
David.
change with it.
The request was delicate,
In times
presented
of
without
great
pressure or
uncertainty,
expectation.
It's often the small,
A genuine
consistent
invitation
actions
rather
that
than a
provide the most
manipulation.
comfort and
I'd
stability.
like that very much,
First
Marcus.
started writing.
In fact, I've been considering something
I thought
similar
it was
myself.
just about
Perhaps we could
putting
collaborate.
words on paper.
His relief was visible.
Thought it would come to this.
That would be
But here we
excellent.
are.
I think David would be pleased to see us working together
Often
on
the
something
small,
positive.
consistent
I believe he
actions
would.
that provide the most
We
comfort
spent the next
and
hour
stability.
discussing the
A huge
scholarship, how it would be
opportunity.
structured, who would be eligible, what criteria would be used for selection.
So it is a huge
By the time we
challenge,
parted,
and
we
it's
had
a
the
huge
outline of a plan
world has
that would create a
changed,
lasting
and
tribute
we
to
have to
David
change
while
with
helping
it.
deserving students for years to come.
In times of
a week
great
later,
uncertainty,
I
it's
received a
often
formal
the small,
invitation to the first
consistent
organizational
actions
meeting
that provide
for the
the most
David
comfort
Fairfield
and
Memorial
stability.
Scholarship Fund.
First started writing,
Stephanie would be there along with
I thought it
representatives
was
from the
just about
university. I
putting
accepted
words
without
on
hesitation.
paper.
The meeting
Thought it
was
would
held
come
in a
to
conference
this.
room at Marcus's
But
firm.
here we are.
When I arrived, Stephanie was already seated at the table, looking
Often the
nervous
small,
but determined.
consistent
Our
actions
eyes met
that
briefly,
provide the most
and she gave
comfort
me a
and
small,
stability.
uncertain
A
nod.
huge opportunity.
The university development officer led the discussion, explaining the process
So
for
it is a
establishing an
huge
endowed
challenge,
scholarship
and
and the
it's a
various
huge
options for
opportunity.
funding
World has
and
changed,
administration.
and we have to
Throughout the
change
meeting,
with it.
Stephanie was engaged and thoughtful,
In times of
asking
great
intelligent
uncertainty,
questions
it's
and
often
making
the
sensible
small,
suggestions.
consistent
When the
actions
discussion
that
turned to the
provide the most
scholarship
comfort and
criteria,
stability.
Stephanie
First
unexpectedly
started
turned to me.
writing,
Eleanor,
I thought it was just
what do you think
about
David valued your
putting
opinion on
words on
education
paper.
more than anyone's?
Thought it would
Should we
come to
focus on
this.
academic achievement
But here
or
we
financial
are.
need? The question was sincere without any
Often
hint
the
of her
small,
former condescension.
consistent actions
I
that
think
provide
David
the
would
most
want us to
comfort
consider
and
both,
stability.
but with an
Huge
emphasis on
opportunity.
potential rather than past performance, looking for students who show
So it
promise
is a
and
huge
determination
challenge,
regardless of their
and
background.
It's a huge opportunity. World
Stephanie
has
nodded
changed,
thoughtfully.
and we have to
That makes
change with
sense.
it.
David always said his
In
own
times of
success
great
wasn't about being the
uncertainty,
smartest
it's
person
often
in
the
the room,
small,
but about being
consistent
willing to
actions
work harder
that
than
provide
everyone
the
else.
most comfort and
He did
stability.
say that, didn't he?
First started writing.
The shared memory created a
I thought it
momentary
was
connection
just
between
about
us. Not
putting
friendship,
words on paper.
but a mutual recognition
Thought
of the
it would
man
come
we
to
both
this.
loved in different ways.
But here we are.
By the end of the meeting, we had established the framework for the scholarship.
Often the small,
Stephanie would
consistent
contribute
actions
$75,000
that
from her
provide the
life
most
insurance
comfort and
payout.
stability.
I would add
A huge
$25,000
opportunity.
from David's investment accounts, and Marcus's firm would provide matching funds
So
of
it is a
$50,000.
huge challenge,
The university
and
would
it's a
manage
huge
the
opportunity.
endowment
The world
generating
has
annual
changed,
scholarships in
and we
perpetuity.
have to change with
As
it.
we prepared to leave, Stephanie
In
approached
times
me
of great
hesitantly.
uncertainty,
Thank
it's
you for
often
doing
the
this,
small,
Eleanor, for being
consistent
willing to work
actions
with me
that
despite
provide the
everything.
most comfort
It
and
means a lot
stability.
that David's
First
legacy will be
started
something we
writing,
created together.
I thought
I
it
looked
was
at her,
just about
really looked at her,
putting
and saw
words
not
on
the
paper.
calculating woman who had
Thought
thrown
it
me
would
out of
come
my
to
home,
this.
but someone struggling
here
to
we are.
rebuild her life and find meaning after loss.
Often the small,
David would be proud of this,
consistent
Stephanie,
actions that
of what
provide
you're
the most
doing with the
comfort
money he
and
left you.
stability.
It's a
Huge
generous and
opportunity.
thoughtful tribute. She blinked rapidly, fighting back tears. Do you
So
really
it is
think
a
so? I
huge
do.
challenge,
And I think
and
he
it's
would
a
be
huge
proud of how you're
opportunity.
picking
The world
yourself
has
up and
changed,
starting over.
and we have
That
to
takes
change
courage.
with it.
The words weren't quite forgiveness,
In times of
but
great
they were
uncertainty,
acknowledgement,
it's often
recognition
the
of
small,
effort and
consistent
change.
actions
Sometimes
that
that's
provide
where
the most
healing
comfort
begins.
and stability.
1 year after David's
First
death,
started
we
writing,
held a small ceremony at the
I thought it
university
was just
to
about
announce the first recipient
putting
of the
words
David
on
Fairfield
paper.
Memorial Scholarship,
Thought it would come
a
to
promising
this.
young woman from a single-parent
we are.
household who dreamed of becoming a financial advisor for
Often the
underserved
small,
communities.
consistent actions
Stephanie and I
that
stood
provide the
side by
most
side
comfort
at the
and
podium,
stability.
not as
A huge
friends, but as
opportunity.
partners in preserving David's memory. She spoke briefly about David's
So it
belief
is
in
a
education
huge
and
challenge,
opportunity.
and it's a
I
huge
shared stories of his
world has
childhood
changed,
determination and
and
kindness.
we have to change with
Afterward,
it.
at the reception, an elderly
In times
professor
of great
approached me.
uncertainty, it's
Mrs.
often the
Fairfield,
small,
your son must have
consistent
been quite
actions
remarkable
that
to
provide the
inspire
most
such
comfort and
cooperation between his
stability.
mother and widow.
First started writing,
Not all families manage grief
I
so
thought
gracefully.
it was just about
I glanced across the
putting
room where
words
Stephanie
on
was
paper.
chatting with the scholarship
Thought it would
recipient,
come to this.
animated in a way I'd rarely
But
seen
here
her
we
before.
are.
It wasn't always graceful, Professor.
Often
But we
the
found our way to
small,
something that
consistent
honors who David
actions
was
that
and
provide
what
the
he would
most
have
comfort
wanted.
and stability.
And isn't that the
A
true
huge
measure of
opportunity.
love? Finding your way back to what matters even when the path is difficult.
So it is a huge
His
challenge,
words stayed with me
and it's
as
a
I watched
huge
the room full of
world has
people
changed,
celebrating David's
and
legacy.
we have to change
The
with it.
scholarship would help deserving students for
In times
years
of
to
great
come,
uncertainty,
creating ripples
it's
of
often the
opportunity
small,
far beyond
consistent
our small
actions
family
that
circle.
provide the most
And in
comfort
establishing
and
it,
stability.
Stephanie
First
and I
started
had somehow
writing,
managed to transform
I
our
thought it
bitterness
was just
into
about
something meaningful.
putting words on paper.
Back at my apartment
Thought
that
it would
evening,
come to this.
I sat on the small balcony
here we are.
overlooking the community garden, Robert's watch in my
Often
hand.
the small,
The journey it had
consistent
taken from
actions
Robert to
that provide
David
the
to
most
Stephanie,
comfort and
and finally
stability.
back to me
Huge
seemed symbolic of
opportunity.
how love continues, evolves, transforms. I fastened
So
it
it
around
is a
my wrist,
huge
feeling its
challenge,
comfortable
and it's
weight
a
like an
huge
embrace from the
world
past.
has changed,
The sun
and
set
we have to
slowly behind the
change with it.
trees, painting the sky in
In
shades of
times
pink
of great
and gold.
uncertainty,
Another day
it's often
ending,
the small,
another beginning
consistent
tomorrow.
actions that
The
provide
chapter
the
of my
most
life with
comfort
David
and
was closed
stability.
now,
First
but the
started
story
writing,
continued. My story
I
filled
thought
with
it was just
unexpected
about
twists and new
putting
characters.
words on paper.
Chapter 2.
Thought it would come to this.
Books. The David
here we are.
Fairfield Memorial Scholarship. And yes,
Often
even a
the
tentative
small,
piece with
consistent
Stephanie.
actions
David
that
had
provide
taken
the
care
most
of me
comfort
after
and
all,
stability.
just as
A
he'd
huge
promised he always
opportunity.
would. Even from beyond the grave, my son had kept his word. But
So
his
it is
greatest
a
gift
huge
wasn't the
challenge,
money or the
and it's a
security
huge
it provided.
world has
It was the
changed,
chance to begin
and we
again,
have to
to
change
build
with
something
it.
new from loss, to
In
discover
times of
strengths
great
I never knew I
uncertainty,
had.
it's often the small,
Sometimes the best
consistent
revenge isn't
actions
revenge at
that
all.
provide the most
Sometimes
comfort and
it's just
stability.
as served
First
exactly
started
when it's needed
writing,
most. And
I
sometimes
thought
if
it
you're
was
very
just
lucky, it
about
comes with the knowledge that the
putting
child
words
you
on
raised
paper.
turned out to be
Thought it would
exactly the
come to
person you
this.
hoped they would become.
But here we
Someone
are.
who cared for others, who protected the vulnerable, who
Often
planned
the
for a
small,
future they
consistent
might not
actions
see.
that
As the
provide
last
the most
light faded
comfort
from
and
the sky,
stability.
I made a
Huge
silent promise to
opportunity.
honor that legacy, not just through scholarships or memories, but through
So
how
it
I
is a
lived each
huge
day,
challenge,
with
and it's a
generosity
huge
instead of bitterness,
The world has
with
changed,
purpose instead of
and
resentment,
we have to change
with
with
an
it.
open heart to whatever might come
In
next.
times of great uncertainty,
After all,
it's
every
often the
ending
small,
truly is a new
consistent
beginning.
actions